Welcome to Married to History, where we try to be informative, entertaining, and family friendly.
Aloha, I'm Christopher. I have a fancy piece of paper on my wall, which means that all of you wish you could be me and how smart I am.
Mm-hmm.
Because it says that I know more about history than you do.
Yes, yes. I'm Shirley. I'm a homeschool mom that relies on good curriculum, Christopher, and various historians on TikTok to teach our kids history.
TikTok fools. Before we get into our episode, let's take a minute to talk about something from a past episode. It's important to keep in mind that Shirley doesn't warn me ahead of time about what our topic is going to be.
Yep, it's fun for me to see what he knows right off the top of his head, and that means sometimes to miss things. If you would like to hear a more comprehensive and well-prepared episode on any topic, just let us know. So, we don't really have a correction today, but I have put more thought into it. Which musical would MacArthur star in as the story of his life? Okay.
You realize that I really had no desire to actually have you answer this question. This was just to
No, I
torment
know,
you.
but it tormented me, and now I've put some thought into
Okay.
it. Okay, so the musical doesn't have to match up in details with the details of MacArthur's life. The whole idea is that it's just like a feeling, a vibe, if you will. So MacArthur is Jean Valjean from Les Mis. He's a strong character with a strong sense of justice. And he is going to do what he needs to do to survive and help those around him. And yeah, there you go. MacArthur is Jean Valjean. I stand by it.
Okay.
I know you care. All right, well, honey, I have a history question for you
I'll
today.
let Rotten Tomatoes judge that.
I have a history question for you today.
I love history questions.
I know you do. Now, this is going to be the second installment of our new series, Unimaginative War Names.
Oh, goody.
So I want to know, what the heck is the 30 Years' War, and why couldn't they think of a better name for it?
The 30 Years' War. Why couldn't they think of a better name for it? I don't know. But like many cases, it was not a unified period of from day one to 30 years later. They were in a constant state of fighting. There were
Okay.
several different battles involved with the 30 Days
I
War.
mean, usually that's how
Or
it
several
works.
different campaigns, I should say, involved within the 30 Days War. All right. So I cannot say that I remember correctly all the details of the 30 Years War.
Okay.
If I remember correctly, France is involved, Austria is involved, and Sweden gets involved for a time, and Prussia also to a degree. If not actually Prussia, a lot of the war is fought in German territory, so that's why I think that Prussia might have been involved to a sway.
Okay.
The most important thing so to answer your question, sorry, I do not know why they called it the 30 Years War, or why they couldn't have come up with something more imaginative than calling it the 30 Years War. If I'm remembering correctly, a lot of it was part of because Sweden had begun to expand its empire into the German territories, or into Northern Europe, and either because of viewing him as a direct threat, or because of, as is commonplace, claims to ancestral lands and holdings and whatnot from the other royal families, France and Austria got involved in it as well.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm not overly familiar on all the details of the 30 Years War. But so a couple of things that some people might enjoy. The story of the Three Musketeers comes out about during the time of the 30 Years War. Cardinal Richelieu, at least, is based on a real man. So
No
was
way.
Louis the 13th, and they were king. And Cardinal Richelieu was a powerful man in France at this time. Whether or not, or how much of the details of the Three Musketeers are authentic to things that actually happened or not, I don't know.
Probably not
I
at
don't
all.
recall ever reading of a story where Richelieu tried to create a secret alliance with Buckingham. I don't remember reading in the exploits of any four particular musketeers. But the most significant thing, history-wise, to come out of the 30 Years' War is that at the end of it, the religious wars in Europe are over. So since the time of the Protestant Revolution, beginning in about the 1500s, Catholics and Protestants have just been going madhouse at
Yup.
each other, killing each other all over the place, declaring war on whole countries just
Right.
over which branch or which faction of Christianity that you followed. After the conclusion of the 30 Years' War, the Treaty of Westphalia is signed. Westphalia is an unincorporated German territory at the time. And in this treaty, again, the most significant detail, I think, for world
Mm-hmm.
history, or at least for Europe's history, is the condition that, all right, religious grounds is no longer, or religion is no longer acceptable grounds for declaring war in Europe. So the Catholics
Right.
and the Protestants agree that, all right, we're not going to be declaring war on each other anymore just because one of us is Catholic and one of us is Protestant. Or we're not going to
How
declare war
long?
for religious reasons anymore.
How long did it take them to get to that point?
So that's
Generations.
the better part of 200 years, if not more. Yeah.
Dang. Better late than never, I suppose. Okay, first of all, a couple things. Westphalia sounds like the setting of a fantasy novel.
Okay.
And two, what time period are we talking?
30 Years of War, if I'm remembering correctly, was early to mid 1700s.
That means nothing. So that's
That means nothing.
You can't go high pitched directly
How
into
does
the
that
mic.
mean nothing?
So let me continue. Telling me the year doesn't help as much as giving me like a point of reference. So this is obviously pre World War One. Okay, I know that much. Okay, what did you say? 1700s.
Early 17 to mid 1700s.
This is before
So this is before
American
the French
Revolution.
Revolution. This is before the American
Okay.
Revolution.
Okay.
This is before this. This is before the 7 Years' War.
Okay.
This is
Before gunpowder.
This is before Versailles has been built.
Okay. Cool. And where did it happen? In France?
The 7 Years' War? No,
No,
it was fought,
30.
Sorry, 30 Years' War. The 30 Years' War was fought, I believe, mostly in what is today German territories.
Westphalia.
Westphalia is one of the German territories. I do not know specifically where all the fighting happened during the 30 Years' War, but I believe the majority of it took place in the German territories. But again,
Oh.
Germany was not a united country at this time.
Okay. Sorry, you probably said this already. So what started it?
I don't remember for sure what started this one, so
Just petty
if I'm-
squabbling again?
if I'm remembering correctly, the King of Sweden was, I want to say Frederick the Great. I might be remembering wrong. He was trying to expand his empire. I do not remember what specifically was causing him to want to expand his empire. If it was just the typical reasons of, oh, I want to be more powerful and I have the means, or
Right.
if it was another classic case of, he had claim to some lands and some of the other countries or big powers in Europe weren't letting him have those lands, or it was disputed, so he used the military to resolve the dispute.
Naturally.
So yeah, I think most of the 30 Years' War was fighting between Sweden, which was Protestant at the time, and Austria and France, which would have been Catholic at the time. Most of the German territories that they would have been fighting in would also have been Protestant. Because I think only Westphalia and Bavaria, or at least they were the two biggest southern German factions that were still Catholic, but I think most of the rest of Germany was Protestant. The Netherlands might have also gotten involved. England might have gotten involved as well, but I think if the Netherlands and England had gotten involved, their involvement was probably not quite as on par as I want to say France, Austria, and Sweden's would have been. And this is all assuming that I'm remembering the details right. It's entirely possible that the operation I'm thinking of with Sweden expanding was something entirely different.
Yes. So was it Frederick the Great or just like Frederick the Okay?
I think that's it. Frederick II, Frederick the Great.
It wasn't Frederick the Okay.
To the best of my knowledge, there is no Frederick anywhere in the world that was written down in history as being Frederick the Okay.
Anything's possible.
Anything
Especially
is
with those
possible.
Vikings. Okay. Anyways, so then it ended 30 years later.
No, I'm going to take that back. I don't think there was ever a Frederick the Okay, because my guess is if there was ever a Frederick the Okay, he would have been defeated in battle, conquered by some other dude, and that dude would have made sure that he would. Let's say that he was Frederick the Okay was conquered by Olaf the Awesome. Olaf would have changed his name to Olaf the Great and would have made sure that all history recorded Frederick the Okay as Frederick the Weak.
Yeah, that's possible. Okay, so 30 years later it ends, and finally they say, yo, we can't fight over religion anymore.
Yes.
And then everything
That's
is peaceful
That's
in Europe
one
ever
of the
since?
conditions. No, everything is not peaceful in Europe because Europe is full of bitter squabbling of families and factions. I would dare say even still today.
Yep.
So yeah, they decided that they weren't going to use religion as a justification for war anymore. They still found reasons to declare war on one another.
Well, I guess, yeah, you can always find something to fight over. Do you remember any other details that you'd like to share?
About the 30 Years' War? No, actually, I don't. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff in there, but no, I don't remember that much about it.
So it's just the background setting for Three Musketeers. That's all anyone cares about?
It's not the background setting for the Three Musketeers. Or like the Three Musketeers is a story that has kind of a connection to it. No, the significant thing of it is how it changed the conflict between Catholic Catholics and Protestants in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, so something I said, this doesn't go into the 30 Years' War, but this is a common misconception in our culture
Mm-hmm.
today. So, remind me, what is the Second Amendment to the Constitution?
Right to bear
Very
arms.
good, right to bear arms. And largely, I think because of the language that's in the Constitution, or rather in the Second
In the
Amendment,
Bill of
a lot of
Rights.
people think that the idea behind the right to bear arms was so that we can have a militia. So I've heard a lot of arguments. The idea that the Second Amendment is in there because we're supposed to be able to have a militia, or the Second
Uh-huh.
Amendment is in there because we need to be able to resist the government.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to say there are others too, but those are the two big ones off the top of my head. So of the two, I think the second one is the more true. And
Mm-hmm.
this is where a historical study, I think, gives us a precedent for this.
Okay.
So the earliest that I know, at least, the earliest source or inspiration, I guess you could say, for the
Mm-hmm.
Second Amendment. Why did these formerly British citizens, now American citizens, think that no, we need to be able to have guns, have weapons to protect ourselves?
I assumed it was because the British troops tried to disarm the Minutemen.
That is certainly one of the elements to it, but this is something that goes back further in British
Oh.
or English culture than
Okay.
that. I don't remember at what point this was added. This was definitely added at sometime in or around the time of Cromwell, or rather the time that they got rid of Oliver Cromwell and
Mm-hmm.
brought the English monarchy back.
Mm-hmm.
One of the conditions that I want to say, they got either Charles II to sign off on this, or they got William and Mary to sign off on this after him,
Okay.
was the condition that all Protestants, so it started off as being a Protestant rule, all
Oh.
Protestants are allowed to keep weapons. The reason being because going back to the
Oh.
memory of Queen Mary, Bloody Mary, and her time, Catholic
Uh-huh.
mobs, sometimes government inspired and sometimes just your neighbors out looking for
Yeah.
some fun, would go out, find the Protestants, and kill their Protestant neighbors or
No
subjects or whatever.
way.
So the Protestants in England made sure that this was a condition that went into the English Bill of Rights, that the Protestants have the right to have weapons to protect themselves. And the goal was to protect themselves from, yes, the government, if the government
Mm-hmm.
ever came to try to kill them again for their religious beliefs,
Yeah.
but also to protect them from mobs of their neighbors as well. So it was a legitimate protection clause. It wasn't that they
Wow.
wanted to be able to have guns so they could go out and just willy-nilly shoot and murder anybody they wanted to.
Uh-huh.
Quite the opposite. It was to discourage anybody out there, at least Catholics at the time,
Yeah.
from wanting to do the same.
So this law didn't specifically disarm Catholics, but it armed Protestants.
Yes, it did not disarm Catholics. I could be wrong, but I think all citizens were probably disarmed at the time. You weren't allowed to have weapons
Oh.
unless the king authorized it or unless there was some other condition to it. But yes, the
Mm-hmm.
Protestants wanted to make sure that if nothing else, there's a rule in there that says not only can we keep them, but you
Mm-hmm.
can't take them away from us. So that way we are always able to defend ourselves
Yeah.
from the government, from bad kings or bad leadership,
Mm-hmm.
and from our neighbors. And that
Right.
so that happens at the tail end of the 1600s or beginning of the 1700s.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that's been in British, if not English culture, for about a century at the time the American Revolution ends. And throughout
Wow.
history, this is something that we can see. One of the first steps whenever there's the fear of rebellion or whenever a government, be it monarchy or otherwise,
Mm-hmm.
is going to try to crack down on its citizens, is going to try to take some more
Right.
power, is to disarm the population, make
Oh,
sure
yeah.
they can't fight back. You've heard of the battles of Lexington and Concord in the
Uh-huh.
American Revolution. I think every kid is taught the story about the Minutemen. What I don't think a lot of kids learn about that, because we hear that, oh, brave American soldiers, Minutemen, stopped and fought them at Lexington and Concord, but they don't know that the reason why there were battles at Lexington and then at Concord is
Uh-huh.
because the British were on their way to Fort Ticonderoga under specific
Right.
orders to steal those guns and
Right.
the ammunition there so that the colonials couldn't fight back.
Right. Now, something that you'd said was really interesting to me. I think when I have thought about the wars in Europe between the Catholics and the Protestants, I've always thought about it in the context of the leaders. So, Elizabeth is what? Protestant?
Elizabeth was
Elizabeth
Protestant.
is Protestant.
She promised
Mary
her
is
sister Mary
Catholic.
that she would restore the Catholic Church when she became queen.
Right.
That was a condition of Elizabeth becoming Mary's heir.
Okay.
But yeah, Elizabeth didn't
didn't.
do that.
Either way, so I don't know if that's the best example, but when we switch between monarchs like that and they switch their allegiances, then we end up with like Bloody Mary. We end up with all this bloodshed and war and, people being killed in the country and wars with other countries that are the quote, wrong religion.
Mm-hmm.
But I've always just kind of assumed or had this picture in my head of the general populace just kind of like living their lives.
Well, that's usually the case. The general population usually does live there. So
This idea of mobs going out and being like, are you baptized Catholic or Protestant?
Well, let's compare it to the United States today. So this is very conservative. I don't have any statistics to back up the numbers that I'm going to use.
Got it.
So these numbers are going to be prone to error. But let's say that 30% of the population of the United States are Republicans. 30% of the United States population are Democrats. And when I say that, I mean that like they're the hardcore loyalists. They are going to vote Republican. They're going to vote Democrat. That's still at least 40%. So the majority, or rather a number of people larger than any one of the other groups in the middle that don't care or just want to live their lives or want to be neutral, whatever the case might be.
Or are a different party or swing both ways.
And because of that, because they are the not caring ones, the moderates, the ones that just want to like sit there and just go about their lives, that also means that they are not organized, whereas the other two are organized. And so even though it's a smaller group on both sides, the organization of these other two sides, the conservatives and the liberals, especially if they're inspired to use violence as a means of getting their way, are going to go at each other. That means they're going to have to go through the moderates to get at each other. And any moderate that they find that isn't willing to take up the quote-unquote cross or take up the mantle of their cause is probably going to get hurt by... Better example of this, I'm going to point at Vietnam.
Okay.
So American soldiers, UN soldiers are in Vietnam, and this was true of Korea too, but I'm going to stick with Vietnam. Are in Vietnam, but then there's also the Northern Vietnamese Army and the Viet Cong, which were the element of the communist military wing that was in South Vietnam. So the Americans are going to all these independent villages, and a lot of these people have no stake in this fight. I mean, doesn't matter who is going to win if the South Vietnamese government wins or the North Vietnamese government wins. Most of the people in this village are still going to be farming or fishing or doing whatever the heck they're doing. It's the only thing that's going to be difference is, all right, who's going to come by and collect their taxes? It's basically the only difference. But so the Americans show up and say, hey, we need you to help us beat these bad guys. The villagers say, okay, yeah, we'll help you. Well, the Americans aren't going to stay there forever. Eventually, the Americans are going to go on and look for the bad guys.
Right.
Bad guys come. I shouldn't say the bad guys. The Americans are going to go off and look for the Viet Cong.
Yes.
Viet Cong comes into the village and says, "Hey, we saw you helping the Americans. What's up with that? Whose side are you on?" If the village doesn't switch sides, then they're immediately the Vietnamese or the Viet Cong are going to kill them or hurt them, punish them in some way. So either because the villagers will willingly switch sides to the Viet Cong, or will submit to the Viet Cong, or are compelled into serving the Viet Cong. And it doesn't work out for the village. Probably a lot of people are going to get hurt there. And even if the Viet Cong don't end up hurting anybody in that village, eventually the Viet Cong is going to walk away. The Americans are going to come back and they're going to say, "Hey, whoa! We had a deal here. How dare you betray us?" And so the Americans are now going to be put in a position where they're going to start hurting these people.
Right.
And so in each case, it's not necessarily that these people in the middle did anything wrong. It's that they didn't commit to a side. And because they would not commit to a side, neither side really has a reason to trust them. And because neither side trusts them, there are always people, unfortunately, on both sides that are going to say, better to kill what you can't trust than to allow what you can't trust to betray you at some point. And to be fair, an awful lot of the travesties that happened in the Vietnam conflict are because foreign soldiers get ticked off when locals aren't loyal to them, even after they've done supposedly nice things for the locals, or because the Viet Cong or the North Vietnamese will punish people for doing nice things for the foreign soldiers.
Okay,
and this is something that this is just something that happens in warfare, all throughout warfare, all generations of time throughout history. There are people in the middle that don't have a stake in the fight, that don't care, and because they're not willing to take up the mantle, or because they want to be peaceful, or for whatever their reason, they get punished by the people by the extremists on the two sides.
I see, and when you put it like that, it makes a lot of sense to me. But I'm just having a hard time imagining, let's say, Great Britain during the times of like it's switching between Protestant and Catholic monarchs. Like, if I'm a Catholic,
Mhm.
I'm a Catholic only because that's what I was raised as. That's how I grew up worshiping. When a new Protestant monarch comes in, like, okay, I get it. They're going to come through. They're going to tear the crosses off the wall in my church that I go to. They're going to give me a different Bible or whatever it is. Maybe they're going to kill my priest and put in a new priest. I don't know. But like, but I'm still a Christian. I'm still going to be reading the Bible and I'm still going to be praying to the same God.
So
But
you're
then, but then I also, so like that stinks. But then I also have to worry about my neighbors who actually care if they're worshiping or like if they're giving fealty to the Pope or not. I have to worry about them coming to my house at night and burning me, like killing my family. That
So
happened?
you're making, yes, all of that happened. You're making the common misconception or the common difficulty, I would say, of you're using what you know, the life that you've lived,
Yeah,
and trying to compare it to a time and a place that you did not live through.
right.
So yeah, back in this time period, people were happy to kill heretics, if you will. If you're Catholic and all of a sudden there's a Protestant in
Mm-hmm.
charge, well, the Protestants they're going to say, "Oh yeah, we're going to get back at all those Catholics for thousands of years of
Yeah.
Catholic oppression and whatnot." And there are going to be some that are going to go gaga. There are going to be others who are going to be stirred up to be
Uh-huh.
dissenters and to be violent and to whatnot by just a couple of guys in the so
Mm-hmm.
there's plenty of examples like this in history too. Hitler is an excellent example. The
Hmm.
Nazi Party existed before his time, but his charisma, he
Yeah.
inspired the people to do things that were never really in the party's charter originally. Same way
Okay.
with any kind of civil conflict that goes on, and even in the United States today, how many champions are there on the right and on the left? Trump is an excellent example of this.
Uh-huh.
You've got examples on the left too. I can't think of anybody
Like
particularly.
AOC?
Oh, sure. Okay. AOC is the type like that, where with her voice, with the things that she's saying, she is capable, like
Mm-hmm.
Trump is, of rallying people that might otherwise have been content to just say, oh, I lost the election. Okay. I'll get another chance
Okay.
in 4 years. No, but of rallying them, inspiring those people to say, to chant, to do more things
Yeah.
that they might not otherwise have been willing to do. I could be wrong, but
Hmm.
like in my personal opinion, I think that that is happening more and more today. That there are that a lot of the moderates in the middle are
Mm-hmm.
instead of the middle group growing because of recognizing in my opinion, the foolishness
Of the
of extremes on
extremes.
both
Mm-hmm.
sides. I think a lot of people are flocking to the extremes of both sides. And that's dangerous because the more
Yeah.
people flock to the extremes, then the more the middle disappears. Then that means that there's probably going to be conflict, and it's probably
Yeah.
going to be a violent one as well. I'm not saying I
Yeah.
wish that. I am not saying that that is conclusive, but history
It's
suggests that
something to
that is
worry.
what would happen.
Yeah, something to worry
Something
about.
to worry about, yes. And I wonder too how much of it, how much of these people that are no longer in the middle but are going to one extreme or another, how much of
Mm-hmm.
that is due to they're afraid of what one side or the other is going to do to them if they stay neutral? How much of
Mm.
it has been inspired because they saw somebody or they believe somebody on one side or the other did
Yeah.
something super bad and they can't tolerate that, so they're going to go to the other. There have
Yeah.
been times where travesties have been perpetrated by one side, blamed on the other side, so that they could get people who were in the middle, people
Yeah.
who didn't want to take sides,
Oh,
to join their
absolutely.
side.
Yeah.
The false flag operation, I believe, is what those things are called, where you
Yeah.
convince people that oh, you've been attacked by these guys. It was actually us just framing those guys.
Right. Right.
So
Dang.
yeah, so going back to the subject at hand, is a
Mm-hmm.
lot of this, and this is what Christians and Protestants were doing to each other, and every
Catholics
time
and Protestants.
yeah, Catholics and Protestants. So yeah, it didn't matter that you were all Christian, kind of like today, that there are lots of different Christian sects, and not
Uh-huh.
every sect is cool with the idea that, oh, we're all Christians. Yay. Some of them are like,
Mm-hmm.
no, you worship Christianity wrong, so you're not really Christian. Or
Right.
even if you do want to call yourself Christian, you're not the right kind of Christian. And I dare say
Yeah.
that Islam is the same. There are Sunnis and there are Shiites that don't like each other.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not familiar with any of disputations that there might be between Jewish sects, but I imagine that there's probably some of those as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I would imagine the same could be true of every religion, though I would admit it would be funniest, I think, to me if there were differences in, or if there were some differences like that in Buddha, because
I don't
but
know.
now that I say that, I could see how some people would take Buddha one way or the other. Sorry, I distract.
I
But
don't
yes,
know.
Catholics and Protestants. not very keen on each other. And yes, every time that a Protestant comes to power, oh yeah, we're going to get revenge on everything those Catholics did to us. Oh, then a Catholic suddenly comes back into power. All right,
Mm-hmm.
we're going to get revenge on everything those Protestants did with us last time. Then a
Mm-hmm.
Protestant comes back to power, and we're back to the old way. I
Right.
would dare say we can easily compare this to the Democrats and Republicans in the United States
Mm-hmm.
today. While there aren't mobs going around hunting down and killing
Thank
people,
goodness.
we are doing what I think despicable things anytime that one
Yeah.
person gets into power. If there was the inspiration that when Donald Trump became president, this was going to inspire a lot of right wing nationalists,
Mm-hmm.
racist groups to take a bolder stand on things. And I think that that was true to a degree,
Yeah,
not to the degree
there
that I
were some
remember
groups that
people
grew.
saying, but I think yeah they were emboldened because of this president.
Yeah.
Well, then Trump is out, Biden's in, and now different groups have been
Mm-hmm.
inspired to, oh yeah, now we're in power and we're going to make every one of those people that loved and supported Trump, we're going to make sure that they have miserable, horrible
Mm-hmm.
lives. And I dare say that whoever wins the next election, same thing's going to happen. If Trump
Yeah.
wins again, I wouldn't be surprised if all the forever Trumpers, I don't know what they're called,
I don't
if all the
know.
forever Trumpers are going to demand, hey, let's go on a campaign to really mess up the lives of all those never Trumpers
I don't
or all
know.
those Democrats who didn't vote for him, or if Biden wins again, or if some other person wins, I don't know.
Yeah. But okay, but none of that was affected by the 30 Years' War because the 30 Years' War was when that
So
ended.
what we need, I would dare say, so what
Uh-huh.
we need in the United States is something like the Treaty of Westphalia,
Okay.
where we agree with each other that okay, we don't have to like each other, but let's stop using this as a reason to kill each other
Right, but what I'm
or to
saying
fight
is
each other.
that that agreement stopped countries from fighting each other over religion. But
Yes.
that wouldn't necessarily affect the in-country infighting that had been happening.
Correct. In country infighting, the local governments, the
Yeah.
local kings, princes, whatever the case
Or
might
your
be, or
neighbors
laws
making a mob and coming. Okay.
would have been responsible for taking care of those kind of conflicts.
Okay.
So it's not entirely different from the witch trials or the witch hunts thing.
Mm,
You got these people that oh they're feeling inspired. The law's not going to do anything to stop them, or they are the law and they're misinterpreting it. So yeah, they're
yeah.
going to go kill the people that they think are bad or wrong or dangerous. And this is another one of the things that I think extremists tend to do, like
Mm-hmm.
the idea that how long is it going to be before it becomes the case where no, we can't just peacefully live with these people who
Mm-hmm.
disagree with us, who believe different things with us. No, it's
Mm-hmm.
actually better, or it's right, or it's good to go out and kill them.
Yeah.
I know that I have already heard people saying things like that in our modern culture today,
Yeah.
and it's just ridiculous. But yeah, back before our modern times, our modern cultures, our understandings, our improved understandings of tolerance and
Uh-huh.
whatnot. Yeah, back in the days of the early to mid 1700s,
Uh-huh.
no, there wasn't a lot of that.
Yeah. That's interesting. Well, at least the countries can't attack each. Wait, does that still like do, so that's a really old agreement. It's obviously very much pre-Geneva Convention.
Mm-hmm.
Is that still a thing that all the countries agree on? Is that we shouldn't start a war just because of religion?
So while I can't say that the Treaty of Westphalia is technically still in effect,
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be surprised. I'm not overly familiar with all the tenets of the Geneva
Mm-hmm.
Convention, but yeah, I would imagine that there should be something in there. Either there should be something specifically written in there, or there should
Mm-hmm.
just be like the general understanding that we all at this table have that yeah, we're not going to declare
Yeah.
war on each other just because Germany has more Protestants than France does.
Yeah. I would
If
hope that
France and
we're
Germany are going to declare war with each other, it's going to be because France is being a baby, still hasn't gotten over all the damage of World War II, or it's going to be
uh-huh.
because Germany is going to say like, you know what, we're tired of French being a baby, we're just going to get rid of them and
Yeah.
finish the job that we failed to
Yeah.
do last time. But that's
Yeah.
a terrible thing to say. I don't think the German people are dumb enough to try to
No.
do that. Sorry, that's not a nice thing to say. I don't think the German people are foolish enough to try to do something like that.
Fantastic.
I am a fantastic person. Yes,
Yes. So
I should
30
write a book.
years? You should write a book. You did. So 30 years, that's all it took?
Well, technically 2 centuries, but yeah, the
What do you
30
mean?
Years War.
What do you mean?
Because Catholics and Protestants have been killing each other for
Okay,
two
yeah, yeah, yeah,
centuries.
yeah, yeah. But the 30 Years' War really was about 30 years?
Yes.
Okay. And they couldn't think of anything more creative.
Probably
The
because, again, it was probably
end
not
of
any one
religious
thing. It was probably several
war.
different periods of war or struggle that just combined in and around the same small area.
Awesome. It's very boring, and how am I supposed to remember if they don't have interesting names?
Sometimes you do. Also, I'll admit that, yeah, I don't always remember. I mean,
Yeah.
the only reason I know about the first Celtic War and the second Celtic War is because of German unification.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, don't even get me started on the war, how many wars
Mm-hmm.
of Austrian aggression there were, how many wars of succession there were, whatnot.
Yeah.
But you can't. Oh, there's not a lot of people who. In order to be creative with military
Mm-hmm.
names,
Mm-hmm.
part of the thing would have to be, well, it has to be something unique.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of these wars at this time are not unique. Oh, it's another king wants this land that our king has said has been his land forever, or that king says has been their land forever. So yay, the kings are all not
Mm-hmm.
liking each other, and it'd be like you and I today fighting over that fallen fence now that we share with our neighbor. It fell on my side again today, so I'm gonna claim all that land today. No, he says it's his land today. Oh, so look at that. Once again, they're fighting because of that stupid fence that neither of them wants to repair.
So you would call it the fence war.
Sorry, the foolish fence that neither of them wants to repair.
So you call
yes,
it the
we would call it
first
the
fence
first
war,
and the
the
second and the third and the fourth French fence war.
But see, what I'm saying
Maybe if it
is,
had gone long enough, we would call it the 3-generation fence war.
maybe that's the key. Because I was gonna say, at least calling it the first fence war, the second fence war, like that makes sense. That points to it a little bit instead of just saying the 2-month war. Like that doesn't give me any details at all. But if you had too many fence wars, you just group them together and say, yeah, that took them 100 years.
Okay, so curious,
I don't
if
like
I said
it.
the Punic Wars, is that a good enough name for you?
Yeah,
There were 3,
yes, but
but that's good enough for you?
yeah, because
Why?
I could Google Punic War and it might, like, would be able to find out really quick time period and location. I would
guarantee
assume.
you type in 30 Years' War, you're going to get the same thing.
Probably, but I don't know. It just seems stupid. 30 years. Like, that doesn't tell me anything. But maybe I know what the word Punic
but
means.
you don't need to know anything. You just told me that you just needed enough information to Google something.
But maybe if I was smart, I would know what Punic means.
Do you know what Punic means?
No, I don't.
It's just the Roman word for Phoenician.
Okay, so if I knew what Punic, I would know it had something to do with Romans and Phoenicians. But 30 years tells me nothing. I don't know if it's Europe. I don't know if it's Asia. I don't know if it's pre-Renaissance.
Do you know who fought in the Punic Wars?
No idea.
The Romans and Carthage.
Okay.
Yeah, those
So
were the
Romans.
Carthaginian Wars, the Romans and the Carthaginians.
I don't
The
know.
Carthaginians were descended from Phoenicians, so yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. That's a descriptive name.
Okay. So what about the
You're proving it.
What about the Servile Wars?
I know
There are 3 of those at least.
There's a cat called a servile cat. Anything to do with that?
No.
But see, at least I have a guess. I have a place to start.
Okay.
I know it's stupid, but that's fine. We're moving on.
Oh, we are? Oh,
Yep, we're
so
done.
There's another question? Oh,
No.
no, we're just done. All right.
Thank
I feel
you
like
for
we talked
listening.
more about not the 30 Years' War than we did the 30 Years' War.
Well, yeah, I mean, when we bring up stupid wars.
If you bring up something that I'm not overly familiar with, then I'm going to go on to the tangents of what I am familiar with that slightly are connected to that.
Yep, and I think that the people know that that's what they come for. Thank you for listening. If you liked what you heard, then please subscribe, tell your friends, and leave us a 5-star review.
If you'd like to hear a future episode with more information about today's topic, contact us on Gmail, Facebook, Instagram, or TikTok at Married to History Pod.
Also, please contact us if you have a silly question idea or if there's something from history that you would love to learn about.
Just know that if you pick a silly one, you're going to be dragging me ever closer to the day of my grave because I'm getting too old for some of this nonsense.
You love it.
I will never admit to that. Be sure to say in your message if it is silly or serious because we don't want to treat a genuine quest for knowledge like a joke.
Talk to you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, we're still good? Yep.
It would appear that we are still good. Technical difficulties are no longer difficulties.
Yes.
I could have come up with something better to say right there. But
I'm really
my
proud
brain
of
was
you.
farting.
I'm really proud of you.
You're proud of me for having a brain fart? I've had many brain farts in my day, and you've never expressed being proud of me before.
I'm not actually listening to you.
That hurts. Didn't you swear once upon a time to to listen to everything I say till the end of time, till death do us part, something like that?
I really don't think that's part of the vows. Okay,
I'd like a second opinion. Oh, no, it's probably not. I should turn off the volume there, or you can just take my phone from me.
Alright.
Treat me like a child.
Okay, I think we're good to go.
Stopped working. Made you look.
I'll do that.